Yes, very good evening, my dear students. So today I'm going to start with the last topic of this chapter called chemical coordination and integration. That is, we are going to talk about endocrine system. Now, the informations that I have given it to you in the last very class or uske pehle bhi jo class hua tha, and that is, before I start with today's class, let me give you some idea about the whole topic. So we started off with what? Glands. What are glands? Glands are nothing but they are the modifications of epithelial tissues. So epithelial tissues, they invaginates to make glands. Some of the glands, they contain some of the chemical substances, which we call it as hormones. Now the glands are of three different types. They are endocrine glands, exocrine glands, and heterocrine glands. Endocrine glands are ductless glands. They don't have duct. Exocrine glands, they do have duct. And heterocrine glands are both in nature. That means they can secrete their hormones by the help of the ducts, or sometimes they can straight away deposit their secretions in the bloodstream. So example of this heterocrine gland is pancreas, testis, and ovary. Hopefully we are going to start from ovary today, and ovary is a heterocrine gland. Okay, now about the endocrine glands, we have talked about the endocrine glands are pituitary, then thyroid gland, then thymus gland, pineal gland, adrenal gland. These are pancreas. Yes, they have got endocrine in nature, but they are also having exocrine in nature. So we cannot consider pancreas under endocrine as a whole. When we talk about exocrine glands are salivary gland, hepatic duct, that means they have liver is one of the example of it. Gallbladder, they have got duct called cystic duct. So these are what? Exocrine glands in nature. Now, on the basis of the mode of secretion, we have classified glands into three different types. Number one, apocrine gland. Number two, merocrine gland. And number three is holocrine gland. Apocrine gland are those glands which can secrete their secretions from the tip of the gland. So only the tip of the gland burst to secrete their secretions. Example is mammary gland. When we talk about the second one called merocrine glands, their secretion occurs by simple diffusion. The third one is holocrine gland. Holocrine gland means when the whole gland needs to burst to secrete its secretion. That is holocrine gland. Example is sebaceous gland or oil gland. So we have talked about that. And then we have talked about the pituitary gland first. Hypothalamic hormones, we know there are two parts. The first part anterior and the second part, last part is posterior. Middle part is middle part. Fine. So we know that from the anterior part of the pituitary gland, what are the hormones which get secreted? We have already done it. On nutshell, growth hormone, which is also called as STH, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, ICSH, industrial cell stimulating hormone, which acts upon the testis, where in interstitial cells of Leydig to secrete testosterone. Lastly, we have talked about that. And then we have got follicle stimulating hormone. We have got ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, which works mainly on adrenal cortex of the adrenal gland. Fine. So these are the different. Prolactin is one of the hormone which is secreted from the anterior gland. So these are the hormones which are secreted from the anterior gland. So when we talk about the middle part, the middle pituitary gland, it secretes a hormone which is called as MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone. The third type is posterior pituitary gland, which secretes two main hormones, what is called ADH and oxytocin. The other term for ADH is vasopressin and pitressin also. The other term for oxytocin is what? Oxytocin is other term is pitocin, or it is also called as birth hormone. It is also called as birth hormone. Fine. So that was about pituitary gland. Okay. Now, then we have talked about thyroid gland. We know that thyroid gland, they have got the follicles inside called thyroid follicles, which are lined by cuboidal epithelium. And they have got a homogeneous mixture which is called as thyrionine inside it. When iodine present inside the diet, it joins with the thyroidenine in one position, we call it MIT, monoiodothyronine. When the iodine joins with two portions called DIT, diiodothyronine. So one of the monoiodothyronine binds with diiodothyronine to give rise to P-3. By coupling reaction, it gives triiodothyronine, which is also called as T3. 2 of the DIT makes T4. By coupling reaction, 2 of the DIT makes T4, which is also called as thyroxine, Clear? Now, if there is a hyposecretion, if there is hypersecretion of thyronine, hypersecretion of thyroxine, it leads into formation of what? Tell me the disease. Exophthalmic disease, also called as Graves' disease. Fine. If there is a hyposecretion of thyroxine, less secretion of thyroxine, it leads into what? It leads into, number 1, simple goiter. Number 2, cretinism in child. Number 3, myxedema in adults. Number 4, Hashimoto's disease. Fine. So this is about thyroxine. We have missed one point about the growth hormone, which is secreted from the anterior pituitary gland. Hypersecretion of growth hormone in child results into gigantism. In adults results into acromegaly. In case of hyposecretion of growth hormone in case of child leads into dwarfism, but in case of adults it leads into Simon's disease. So we have talked about that also. Then comes adrenal cortex. When we talk about adrenal gland is having 2 parts. One is called cortex and the one is medulla. From cortex there are 3 zones: zona glomerulosa outside, zona fasciculata, and last is zona reticularis. Zona glomerulosa, it secretes mineralocorticoids, which is example is aldosterone, and aldosterone helps in the maintenance of sodium and potassium ion in the body, in the blood. Second, we have got glucocorticoids. Glucocorticoids examples are cortisol and cortisone, and basically they help in what? Glucose metabolism, sugar metabolism, protein metabolism, and fat metabolism. It maintains the BMR. Fine. So we have talked about adrenal, that is glucocorticoid. The last one is sex corticoid. And when we talk about sex corticoids, the example of sex corticoid, which is secreted from the zona reticularis. Sex corticoids example is epiandrostenedione or androstenedione. And what happens if there is slight hypersecretion or hyposecretion? It can lead into what? It can lead into adrenal virilism. That means maleness in female and femaleness in male is hirsutism. We have talked about that also. Yes, some of the characteristics which changes in the body. Okay, so we have talked about that also. The next one is the adrenal medulla. Adrenal medulla, it contains 2 types of hormones. It secretes 2 types of hormones. One is adrenaline and the one is noradrenaline, which is epinephrine or norepinephrine. These 2 are called catecholamines. If you remember that, catecholamines. Okay. Now, adrenaline hormone, we call it as the emergency hormone. It has got 2 main functions we have talked about. One is they are also called as 3 Fs. That is flight, fright, and fight. The next one is 4S. The first one is source of energy. The second one is salt retention. Third one is sugar metabolism. And the fourth one is sexual desire. Clear? So these are about adrenaline. Adrenaline works in excited state, noradrenaline works in normal state. Clear? But functions are all the same. Then we have talked about testis, I think. Pancreas. In pancreas, we have talked about there's a special type of cells called islets of Langerhans. So they are alpha, beta, and gamma as well as delta. And there is an F cell also. We have not talked about that. It's not there in a book. Alpha secretes glucagon. Alpha cell secretes glucagon, which helps in increasing the blood sugar by breaking down glycogen, the process called glycogenolysis. So it induces or stimulates glycogenolysis. When we talk about beta cells, it secretes insulin. Insulin, it decreases the blood sugar level by making glycogen. So it helps in glycogenesis. And thereby it reduces the blood sugar level. Then the gamma cells, it secretes gastrin. Delta cells secretes somatostatin, which regulates the secretion of insulin and glucagon. So it makes a balance in the body. Now, when we talk about the hyposecretion of insulin, what happens due to hyposecretion of insulin? The blood glucose level is going to go high, and we are going to suffer from a disease called diabetes mellitus. Fine. So that was, we have talked about pancreas. Now think about it. After pancreas, we have talked about testis. Last day we talked about testis. Now in testis, there are some special cells called interstitial cells of Leydig, which secretes a hormone called testosterone. And this testosterone, it can help in increasing, it helps in maleness in a male. or secondary sexual characteristics in males. And what are secondary sexual characteristics? That means having some changes in the body during puberty. That is a low-pitched voice. That is low-pitched voice. Then development of muscles. Then broad shoulder, narrow waist, aggressive nature. Fine. Development of hairs on the body, on chest, on face. Fine. Beards, mustaches. These are the what? These are the exhibitions of testosterone. Just inside this seminiferous tubules where the sperm is produced. The sperm is produced by the process called spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis is controlled by which hormone? LH or FSH? LH. So LH is going to be, what is LH? Luteinizing hormone. Secreted from GnRH. From hypothalamus, there is a hormone called GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone, which mainly excites the pituitary gland to secrete LH and FSH. So LH, it helps in spermatogenesis, and when sperm formation occurs inside the seminiferous tubules, if you cut the section of it, you can see some specialized cells called Sertoli cells, where the sperm head remains embedded inside them. And the sperm cells, they draw nourishment from this Sertoli cells. The other type of Sertoli cells are subtentacular cells and nurse cells. Why they are called nurse cells? Because they nurse the growing sperms. And the process by which the sperm comes out from the Sertoli cells, the release of the sperm from the Sertoli cells or from the seminiferous tubules is called spermiation. It's called spermiation. So last day we have discussed about all this. So I've given you the nutshell. We have just revised everything. Now we are going to start with today's class. We're going to start with the ovary and we're going to finish off with this chapter. So let's start with the ovary. Let's start with the ovary. Okay, so when we talk about ovary, let me first give you this idea. So there is a pair of ovary, Now when we talk about ovary, if this is the ovary, this is one ovary, Now inside ovary, you can see there are two portions. Again, the outermost portion should be called as cortex, and it should be medulla, or we can call it as stroma, Inside stroma, what is present? Inside stroma, the blood vessels are present. Inside stroma, what is present is the blood vessels. So this is blood vessel present. Okay, this is artery and this is veins. These are veins. Okay. So whenever we know that whenever there are arteries and veins, it should have nerves associated with it. There are two friends always. You cannot have blood vessels without nerves. So nerves are present inside this stroma. Blood vessels are present inside this stroma. But when we talk about the cortex, inside cortex, since birth, a particular female baby, they contains follicles. They have got 8 lakhs of follicles. Out of that, 60,000 of the follicles remains active. But in the life cycle, see, this is the FSH hormone, by which this particular follicle is going to change into primary follicle. This primary follicle is going to change by the help of follicle stimulating hormone into secondary follicle. And secondary follicle is having some fluid-filled cavity. And this fluid-filled cavity is called, what is it? It's called antrum. And then the secondary follicle is going to become a tertiary follicle. And this is the tertiary follicle, which normally we call it as Graafian follicle. So this is Graafian follicle having some fluid-filled cavity over here called antrum. Now this particular which we normally call it as ovum, which should be called as secondary oocyte, and we are going to understand what is secondary oocyte by the process of oogenesis. So what is oogenesis? It's nothing but the process by which the ovum is produced inside the ovary. Now, this structure is a tertiary follicle, which we normally call it as Graafian follicle. Now, this Graafian follicle, this particular layer after this antrum, there is a particular cellular layer present over here, and this cellular layer is called membrana granulosa. Membrana granulosa. Membrana granulosa. And this membrana granulosa, it secretes a chemical called 17B estradiol. 17B estradiol, which is the chemical name of estrogen. Which is the chemical name of estrogen. That means this estrogen hormone, which creates femaleness in a female, is produced from the membrana granulosa of the Graafian follicle. Normally what we know from the book, that it is produced from the ovary. Normally they call it as from ovary, but which part of the ovary? From the structure called Graafian follicle, and they have got a structure called membrana granulosa, which secretes 17B estradiol, which is the estrogen, which creates femaleness in a female. Now, what is called femaleness in a female? I think you know that. They have got high-pitched voice. The voice becomes shrill, high-pitched voice. Development of mammalian glands takes place. Number 3, they have got smooth skin. Unlike in males, they have got rough skin done by the testosterone. And they have got narrow waist and broad waist. Why the waist becomes broad? Due to the deposition of fats, which is quite common. So these are all done by, and what kind of emotions? Emotional, they have got emotional well-being, not aggressive. So this is done by estrogen. Now, this particular stalk which holds the secondary oocyte, you can see the stalk. This stalk is called as discus proligerus. Discus proligerus. Discus proligerus is also called as cumulus euphorus, which is also called as cumulus euphorus. Cumulus euphorus. Cumulus euphorus. Fine. So this is the structure of an ovary normally. So when we talk about ovary, normally what comes in our mind is about the hormone which is called as estrogen. What happens to this Graafian follicle after it bursts? The bursting of the Graafian follicle, the bursting of the Graafian follicle is due to, the bursting of the Graafian follicle is again due to, the bursting of the Graafian follicle to release the ovum is due to LH surge, which we call it as LH surge. So LH surge, when LH increases on the 14th day, approximately on the 14th day of the menstrual cycle, the Graafian follicle bursts to liberate out secondary oocyte. And after this, what happens? What is the fate of this Graafian follicle? The fate of this Graafian follicle, after this, it changes into a degenerative structure, a yellow-colored degenerative structure called corpus luteum. Called corpus luteum. It's a yellow-colored degenerative structure called corpus luteum, which secretes 3 types of hormones. One is estrogen, second is progesterone, and third one is inhibin. So corpus luteum ultimately, after the further degeneration, this becomes corpus albicans. This becomes corpus albicans, and albicans is a white-colored structure. Well, albicans is a white-colored structure, and this corpus albicans ultimately forms into a degenerative structure further called as corpus hemorrhagicum. Corpus hemorrhagicum. Hemorrhagicum. Fine, we have to study the same in class 12. Third chapter, human reproduction. So in human reproduction, second chapter called human reproduction, we will study about all this. Okay, so this is about ovary. So let's get into the what NCERT has got to say about ovary. So this is ovary in front of us. See, ovary is the primary sex organ. Why it is called primary sex organ? Why it is called primary sex organ? Yes, Varun, tell me. Because the main gamete called ovum is produced inside the ovary. The main gamete ovum is produced inside the ovary. That's why it is called as the primary sex organ, which produces one ovum during each menstrual cycle. Now, Ritam, tell me, if it produces one ovum during each menstrual cycle, how many ovary plays a role in 1 month? One or both of them? One ovary or both the one menstrual cycle? Any idea? One ovary at a time. One ovary at a time. Because in one cycle, only one ovary becomes activated and it produces only one ovum. Fine? ऐसा नहीं होता कि एक ही महीने में नहीं होता नहीं है. Sometimes it happens like this, that both the ovary becomes functional. So that is the reason why sometimes we have dizygotic twins. What is dizygotic? एक ओवरी से यहाँ पे ओवम आया, fallopian tube पे, और एक ओवरी से यहाँ पे और एक ओवम आया. 2 types of sperms, different types of sperms. Reaches over here, one reaches over here, makes ram, reaches over here, makes sham. Very good. So you know both of them. Good. So that is it. So Ram and Shyam, completely they look different. Completely they look different, and that is why they are called dizygotic twins. And the twins that we normally see is monozygotic twins. We're going to talk about that, where one sperm is responsible for making that. One sperm fertilizes the ovum, but during cleavage, they don't cleave. They cleave, but they have got the same type of genetic material, and that is called monozygotic twins. जहाँ पे देखने में same रहते हैं. We will talk about that in class 12. In addition, ovary also produces two groups of steroid hormones. What are they? Estrogen and दोनों नाम के अंदर, can you feel steroid is there? See, steroid, and estrogen, steroid. Fine. Now, ovary is composed of ovarian follicles and stromal tissues. Ovarian follicles कहाँ पे है? How will you tell me? Ovarian follicles are present in which part of the ovary? In the cortex. And stromal tissues means stroma is there inside. Inside the structure is called cortex or stroma. So stromal tissues. The estrogen is synthesized and secreted mainly by the growing ovarian follicles. See, the estrogen is synthesized and secreted mainly by the growing ovarian follicles. Which follicle? Graafian follicle. Estrogen produced from which follicle? Just now we have talked about that. Graafian follicle. After ovulation, the ruptured follicle is converted to a structure called corpus luteum, which secretes mainly progesterone. So after ovulation, the ruptured follicle is converted to a structure called corpus luteum. It's a yellow color. Just now we talked about that. And it secretes a hormone called progesterone. What are the two other hormones? Adrian, tell me what are the two other hormones we secrete from the corpus luteum? Estrogen. Very good. Inhibin and estrogen. Good. Now, estrogen produce wide-ranging actions such as stimulation of growth and activities of female secondary sex organs. So any type of development in female before puberty is done by growth hormone, but after puberty it is assisted by growth hormone as well as estrogen. Growth hormone as well as estrogen. So estrogen creates a huge change in the body, and that is what? Development of growing ovarian follicles, appearance of female secondary sex characters, example, high-pitched voice, mammary glands development. So this occurs after puberty. Estrogens also regulate female sexual behavior. Estrogen also regulates female sexual behavior is shown by estrogen hormones. If progesterone supports pregnancy. Progesterone supports. So name the hormone which maintains pregnancy. Maintains pregnancy. What is the meaning of maintenance of pregnancy? The hormone is progesterone, and what is the meaning of maintenance of pregnancy? I think you know this little bit of idea is there from class 10th knowledge. This is uterus. Just hold on. Let me show you in this whiteboard. Okay. Now, this is okay. This is fimbriae, the finger-like projections. This is fimbriae, finger-like projections. Okay. Okay. Now, this is ovary. So this is, what is this? This is uterus. Inside this uterus, you can see inside this uterus, this particular layer is endometrium wall. This is what? Endometrium. The inner wall is called endometrium. Then there is another layer which is called as myometrium. It's a muscular layer. It's a muscular layer. And then this is perimetrium. The last layer is called perimetrium. So outside layer is called perimetrium. So there are three layers inside uterus. So what happens? By the help of this progesterone, due to the estrogen activity, there is some proliferation of cells in the endometrium wall. So new cells bante hain yahan pe. The new cells proliferates inside the endometrium wall every month by the action of estrogen. And the thickness of this endometrium becomes 3 to 5 millimeter every month. This is called as the endometrium wall. So every makes minimum 3 to 5 millimeter, and this 3 to 5 millimeter is required for, this is ovum being secreted from this Graafian follicle by the process of LH surge. Ovum got released, and this is the ovum waiting for a sperm to come and fertilize it. So during copulation, sperm are ejaculated over here, this is called vagina, and the sperm travels over here, reaches in this particular section of the fallopian tube, which we call it as ampulla, and this is isthmus junction of the fallopian tube. So what is the fertilization site of human body? Is ampulla isthmus junction. So the sperm reaches over here, fertilizes it, it makes 2n, n plus n becomes zygote. This zygote slowly comes over here, 32 cell stage, mainly 32 cell stage, which we call it as blastocyst. It gets implanted over here in this 3 to 5 millimeter thickened endometrium wall. This 3 to 5 millimeter thickened endometrium wall should be maintained for next 280 days. It should be maintained for the next 280 days. Who maintains the thickness of the endometrium wall? What is the name of the hormone? Progesterone helps in maintenance of this 3 to 5 millimeter thickness of this endometrium wall till the baby gets parturited. So parturition is the act of childbirth. So this progesterone level maintains the thickness of this endometrium wall for next 180 days. Is this clear? So that is why progesterone, how, now next question, so how it maintains? See, inside this cellular layer, there should be some blood vessels present. So these are the blood vessels present inside the endometrium wall. These are the blood vessels present. And progesterone basically helps in vasodilation. Vasodilation, what is the meaning of that? It increases the diameter of the blood vessels. So vasodilation is going to make what? Is going to make the blood pressure is going to reduce or increase? Reduces. Vasodilation means, what is blood pressure? When the flowing blood moves in this direction, when the flowing blood which is moving in this direction, the lateral pressure the blood exerts on the wall of the blood vessel is called blood pressure. So normal blood pressure is 120 by 80, you know that, millimeter of Hg. But if there is a vasodilation, the blood pressure is going to get reduced. So that means the blood vessels inside the endometrium wall remains reduced to the entire gestation period, so that the cellular level, that thickened 3 to 5 millimeter of thickness of the uterus remains constant throughout the gestation period. But suddenly, if due to any reason, now you have heard about this miscarriage. What happens during miscarriage? If suddenly adrenaline rush occurs in that pregnant woman, pregnant mother, adrenaline rush occurs due to any type of any type of news, which is the death of some close relative. What can happen? If adrenaline rush occurs, all the hormones are going to come down. Along with that, the progesterone level comes down. The moment progesterone level comes down, what is going to happen? The moment progesterone level comes down, it is going to help in vasodilation, or vasoconstriction is going to occur. Vasoconstriction, the blood vessel is going to constrict, and the blood pressure is going to become increased. The blood pressure is going to go high. The moment the blood pressure goes high, the blood vessel is going to burst, and the blood will start oozing out, which we call as menstrual cycle. Along with that particular, if it happens within the first trimester, first 3 months, the baby can automatically come out from the body, and that is called miscarriage. Got the point? We are going to study some more events, more informations in class 12. Is this clear? So how progesterone maintains pregnancy, you got the idea about that. So that is it. So that is the function of progesterone. Let's get into this. So that is how it maintains pregnancy. I think that's, progesterone also acts on the mammary glands. See, progesterone also acts on the mammary glands and stimulates the formation of alveoli. What is alveoli? It is a sac-like structure which store milk and milk secretion. Is it milk secretion is completely done by progesterone, or mainly milk secretion is done by oxytocin? Oxytocin hormone, we have already talked about, posterior pituitary gland. Oxytocin helps in secretion of milk. Fine, secretion of milk, and that has got some role to play. What is, I think in nervous system we have talked about a structure called amygdala center. Remember? Amygdala. What is the function of amygdala? all emotions, when you become emotionally high, do you think properly? Can you think properly? What happens with your age? Find all this stuff that you are into right now. So you have got emotional high amygdala, highly activated amygdala. Fine. So in that situations, you're not being able to take firm decisions. Fine, because amygdala is overactive. Clear? Good. Varun is laughing. I don't know what is happening with Varun. Varun is thinking about Arijit. Arijit is thinking about why Varun is in problem. In mammals, following organs consist of a central medullary region surrounded by a cortical region. See, in mammals, following organs consist of a central medullary region. Inside there is a medulla, and outside there is a cortex. So these are present in ovary, kidney, thymus gland, adrenal gland, brain. We have talked about that. So they have two regions, cortical as well as what? Medullary region, in a medullary region. Now, what is this? Hormones of heart, kidney and gut. Hormones of heart, kidney and heart, hormones of heart, kidney and GPT. What is GPT? Endocrine cells present in different parts of the gastrointestinal tract. Gastrointestinal tract starts from what? GI tract starts from. When we talk about the gut means it starts from mouth, ends with anus. So secretes 4 major peptide hormones. Nearly gastrin, just now we have talked about that. Remember gamma cells, it secretes gastrin. Secretin is another local hormone secreted from the intestine. Cholecystokinin and gastric inhibitory peptide, GIP. These are some of the endocrine cells present inside the GI tract. So their point of action is locally. So what kind of hormone they are called as? Local hormone or trophic hormone? Local hormone. So they are called as local hormone. It's clear? Gastrin is produced by intestine, duodenum. See, the question came to 10, which acts on the gastric glands and stimulates the secretion of hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen. So it is secreted from intestine, mainly the C7 and duodenum, but its point of action is on what? Oxygenatic cells and chief cells. Chief cell secretes what? Chief cell of stomach secretes pepsinogen, inactive pepsinogen, and oxygenatic cell secretes hydrochloric acid. So gastrin, which is secreted from the duodenum, but it has got a role to play inside stomach cells. Secretin acts on the exocrine pancreas and stimulates secretion of water and bicarbonate ions. Secretin acts on the exocrine pancreas and stimulates secretion of water and bicarbonate ions. CCK is secreted from duodenum that causes contraction of gallbladder. CCK, that is cholecystokinin, is secreted from duodenum that causes contraction of gallbladder. And mind you, those agents which helps in the contraction of gallbladder, we call those agents chloritic agents. Chloritic agents is important. Chloritic agents. One of the example of chloritic agent is CCK and PZ. CCK, cholecystokinin, and PZ is pancreozymin. PZ is pancreozymin. Cholecystokinin, pancreozymin. They are chloritic agents which can help in the secretion of what? Secretion of bile from the gallbladder. GIP, enterogasterone, is very, very important. Enterogasterone. Now, enterogasterone inhibits gastric secretion and motility. It's a negative hormone. It's an inhibitory hormone, and which we call it as GIP, gastric inhibitory protein. Now, GIP, one of the GIP is enterogasterone, which inhibits the gastric secretion and motility of the gastric juices. Motility of the stomach. Is this clear? Is this clear? Any issues, bro? Second point, this one. Secretin is a hormone which acts on the exocrine pancreas. What is the meaning of exocrine pancreas? Pancreas is what kind of gland?
Both.
Heterocrine. What is the duct of the pancreas called? Pancreatic duct. So basically, secretin acts upon the pancreatic duct of the pancreas, exocrine pancreas, that is with duct, and stimulates secretion of water and bicarbonates. And it secretes what? Water and bicarbonates. Pancreas is going to make basic or acidic secretions. Basic secretions, bicarbonate. Got the point? Got the idea? Now, gastrin and GIP, that is gastric inhibitory peptide or protein, have antagonistic effect, opposite effect. Because gastrin is going to stimulate the activity of gastric secretion, or GIP क्या करेगा? GIP is going to inhibit, that is enterogesterone. Enterogesterone, and this is very, very important. Make a star mark on enterogesterone. It's a star mark. Enterogesterone is having inhibitory effects of what? Of gastric secretions and motility. Gastric secretions and motility. Is this clear? So gastrin का opposite काम इसका है, is an antagonistic hormone. Fine. Now hormones are also secreted by some tissues which are not endocrine glands. Hormones are also secreted by some tissues which are not endocrine in nature. For example, the atrial wall. See, the atrial wall of our heart. Atrial wall of our heart secretes a very important peptide hormone called atrial natriuretic factor. देखो ये local hormone कैसा है? देखो, it's a local type of effect. ANF, atrial natriuretic factor, which decreases blood pressure, and this is how it maintains if it increases blood pressure, then there is every chance of what? Hemorrhage. So it decreases blood pressure inside heart, so saves the heart, and is a local one called ANF, atrial natriuretic factor. Got the idea? Again, should I repeat? For example, the atrial wall. What is atrial wall? You know, there are atriums. There is right atrium and left atrium. So from the atrial wall of our heart, it secretes a very important peptide hormone, which decreases the blood pressure. Gastrin and GIP. Gastrin and GIP have antagonistic effect. Hormones are also secreted. For example, that is wall. Okay. Aldosterone and ANF have antagonistic effect. See, aldosterone and atrial natriuretic factor, they have got antagonistic effect. Very, very important. Make a star mark on this. Aldosterone is a mineralocorticoid. Aldosterone is an example of mineralocorticoid. And what is the function of aldosterone? It helps in sodium and potassium balance. Fine. It maintains that, but it is having some antagonistic effect. That means it stops the activity of sodium and potassium inside the heart muscles. When blood pressure is increased, ANF is secreted, which causes dilation of the blood vessel. है ना? जब blood pressure बढ़ गया inside heart, if the blood pressure increases, so blood pressure increases मतलब this was the blood vessels diameter, this is a lumen, and the moment ANF is secreted, which causes dilation of the blood vessel. Blood vessel को क्या कर दिया? Dilate कर दिया. What is going to happen to the blood pressure? The blood pressure is going to reduce. Got the point? This is the function of ANF. The juxtaglomerular cells of kidney produces a peptide hormone called erythropoietin. JG cells. It secretes a hormone called erythropoietin, which stimulates erythropoiesis. It's a very, very important point. What is erythropoiesis? Formation of RBC. We have done this in the body fluids and circulation. We have completed RBC in extensive study we have made. Erythropoiesis is the process. Poiesis मतलब क्या है? Formation. Erythropoiesis is the formation of RBC inside red bone marrow, which is done by a hormone secreted from the kidney. Which part of the kidney? Juxtaglomerular cells, JG cells. And it secretes erythropoietin, which helps in erythropoiesis. Several other non-endocrine tissues secrete hormones called growth factors. Several non-endocrine tissues, it secretes hormones called growth factors. These factors are essential for the normal growth of tissues and their repairing and regenerations. Come down to the next topic, which is called as nature of hormones. So last day we talked about, in the very first class we have talked about, there are three different types of hormones. One is amino hormone, peptide hormone, and steroid hormone basically. Now, on the basis of their chemical nature, hormones can be classified into groups. One is peptide, steroid, and amino. Some of them are iodothyronine, which are thyroid hormones. Now, peptide, polypeptide, protein hormones. Example, majority of them: insulin, glucagon, P-3 hormones. That means all the P-3 hormones we have talked about. Stage, growth hormone, thyroid-stimulating hormone, prolactin. All of them are peptide in nature. Hypothalamic hormones says FSH, growth, FSH and LH. Hypothalamic hormones are LH and FSH. They are all peptide hormones. Then TCT. What is TCT? Thyrocalcitonin. PTH, parathyroid hormone. Thymosin, thymus. Very good. So they are all of, majority of them comes under peptide hormones. But some of them, steroid hormones are cortisol. Steroid hormones are cortisol, secreted from the adrenal cortex. Cortisol, testosterone, you know that testosterone, estradiol and progesterone. They are all steroid. Iodothyronine, that is thyroid hormones. And amino acid. Why iodo? What for the formation of T3 and T4? What they need? Iodine. So iodo hormones. See, iodothyronine. Thyronine is present where? Inside the thyroid follicles. The thyroid follicles contains cuboidal epithelium, so they are present over there inside the thyroid follicles. So this is present over there. Thyronine are present over here. Amino acid derivatives or biogenic amines, and they are adrenal medulla hormones. What are they? Epinephrine and non-epinephrine. Epinephrine and non-epinephrine. They are amino acid derivative. That means basically, what are they called together? Epinephrine and non-epinephrine together is called as catecholamines. Catecholamines, very, very important. Catecholamines, very, very important. Mechanism of hormone action. So we have come to the last portion of this. Mechanism of hormone action. How the hormones work. Now, how the hormones work. See, hormones, they have got, so the cells, they have got a specific receptors. Fine. Say one of the cells is there. When follicle-stimulating hormone is passing by, and they have got receptors for growth hormone, they are not going to act upon follicle-stimulating hormone. So if they have growth hormone only, they are going to start activating. Clear? So what is the mechanism how the hormone acts? Let me, before we getting into the NCERT says, let me give you some idea. Some of the hormones are lipid soluble, some of the hormones are lipid insoluble. The lipid soluble is going to pass through the cell membrane, because you know the cell membrane is made up of what? Phospholipid and proteins. So they can easily pass through. So they don't require any receptors. दरवाजे में कोई सिक्योरिटी उसको जरूरत नहीं है, वो स्ट्रेट अंदर आ जाएगा. बट सिक्योरिटी अगर है, दैट मींस दे आर रिसेप्टर्स. फाइन. और उस सिक्योरिटी को दिया गया है, दीज आर द नेम्स एट, सी इसका फेस देख लो, इसका फोटोग्राफ आपके पास है. और अलाउ ओनली देम टू पास इनसाइड. सो वो स्पेसिफिक हो गया सिक्योरिटी गार्ड. सो दैट इज अ रिसेप्टर. सो वो क्या होगा? एसिड इंसॉल्युबल जो हो है उसको कहां पे बाइंड करना पड़ेगा? पहले रिसेप्टर के साथ. Fine, we will talk about that. See, not acid soluble, that is lipid. Hormones produce their effects on target tissues by binding to specific proteins called hormone receptors located in the target tissues only. Hormone receptors present on the cell membrane. कहां पे रहता है hormone receptor? Every cell membrane they have got hormone receptors. Remember the fluid mosaic model by Singer and Nicholson in the chapter Cell. Fluid mosaic model. In those, from the protein, extrinsic protein, there are some chains of Y-shaped cells present, a Y-shaped structure present. What are those? Sometimes glucose. So we call this glucose along with protein as glycoproteins. Glucose along with proteins are called glycoproteins. And what is FSH? It's a glycoprotein in nature. What is FSH? Follicle-stimulating hormone. It's a glycoprotein in nature. You can see the figure in your book. You can see the figure in the book. See, FSH is binding with the receptor present on the cell membrane. Present on the cell membrane. Yes. This is the structure. This is the structure. This is follicle-stimulating hormone FSH. It is having a special receptor on the cell membrane of the ovary. This is cell membrane. This is lipid, remember? Bilipid layer. This is a polar head. This is a non-polar tail. This is polar head. Fine, I think you know this. This is the polar head of the lipid. This is a non-polar tail of the lipid. This is non-polar tail, this is the polar head. Fine. So they have got some receptors associated over here on the cell membrane. Now why FSH needs a receptor? Because they won't be able to pass through straight away through the lipids. So they are lipid soluble or lipid insoluble? Yes, great. FSH is what kind of hormone? Peptide or non-peptide? It's a peptide hormone. Think about it. So initially it binds with the receptors, and the moment they bind with the receptor, there will be response 1. There's some changes in the cell membrane. That response 1 is going to activate the second messenger. And those same messenger are CAMP, cyclic adenosine monophosphate, or sometimes calcium. So you need to activate this calcium ions or cyclic AMP. At the moment cyclic AMP gives information, there is a biochemical response. And this biochemical response is going to change, is going to activate the physiological response. And what is the physiological response? Is the ovarian growth. So ovary में growth के लिए कौन responsible है? Follicle stimulating hormone. किस तरह से काम करता है? Follicle stimulating hormone binds with the receptors on the cell membrane. The receptor gives a first response. That response gets into activates the second messenger. The second messenger is cyclic AMP or sometimes calcium ion. You have to remember this. Cyclic AMP कैसे बना? Cyclic AMP कैसे बनता है? Tell me. ADP टूटने से होता है ये. Now when the ADP is broken down by ADP, what? Adenyl cyclase. This is the name of the enzyme. When ADP is acted upon by adenyl cyclase, it gives rise to what? Cyclic AMP plus PPI. What is PPI? दो फॉस्फेट यहाँ पे आ गया, एक फॉस्फेट रह गया यहाँ पे. So this is called cyclic adenosine monophosphate plus PPI means what? Pyrophosphate, inorganic pyrophosphate. So the enzyme which is going to break down ATP is adenyl cyclase. This is CMP, and this CMP acts as second messenger. Got the point? So second messenger is going to change some biochemical responses, is going to make some biochemical responses inside the cell, and that biochemical response is ultimately going to change into physiological responses. And that is physiological response क्या है? जिसके लिए FSH सीड किया गया था, वो क्या था? To have growth in the ovary, to have growth in the ovary. चलो थोड़ा भी देख लेते हैं इसमें. Yes. So hormones receptors present on the cell membrane of the target cells are called membrane bound receptors, and the receptors present inside the target cell are called intracellular receptor. अगर सेल के अंदर receptors हैं, we call it intracellular receptors. Mostly nuclear receptors. क्या कहते हैं उसको? Nuclear receptors present in the nucleus. So intracellular receptors कहाँ पे रहेगा? Nucleus में, और बाहर cell membrane में रहेगा. Binding of a hormone to its receptors leads to the formation of a hormone receptor complex. देखो ये दोनों बनके क्या बना? आपके बुक में ये डायग्राम था रिसेप्टर का, ये था, और यहाँ पे कौन जाकर बाइंड किया? The one which binds over here is follicle stimulating hormone. Now FSH along with the hormone receptor together makes hormone receptor complex. क्या बनाया? Hormone receptor complex. Each receptor is specific to one hormone. This receptor cannot bind with, say, adrenaline. It's not going to be able to bind with adrenaline hormone. So each receptor is specific to one hormone only, and hence receptors are specific in action. Hormone receptor complex formation leads to a certain biochemical changes in the target tissue. अब ये hormone receptor complex जो है, it is going to change biochemical response which is being shown in the figure, and target tissue metabolism, and hence क्या होगा? Physiological response is going to occur. It's shown in the figure. Okay. Come down to target tissue metabolism, and hence physiological functions are led by hormones. Steroid hormone. See next figure. Steroid hormone. So they are lipid soluble. So they're going to straight away pass. They don't have any receptors. They don't need any receptors. वो सीधा घुस जाएगा. ये कौन है? ब्रह्मोस मिसाइल है. Fine. Yeah. So ब्रह्मोस मिसाइल, ठीक है, तो घुस जाएगा वहां पे. देखो घुस गया. एस्ट्रोजन है. It's going to straight away get inside and bind with even nuclear membrane को वो अंदर से आ गया. Nuclear membrane को भी वो पास कर गया, and straight away goes and binds with the DNA. देखो डीएनए में बाइंड कर रहा है, इट्स गोइंग टू बाइंड विद द डीएनए, सी इट्स गोइंग टू बाइंड विद द डीएनए। देखो इसका ब्रह्मोत्सर्जन का काम देखो, दिस इज एस्ट्रोजन, स्टेरॉइड हार्मोन है, कोई रिसेप्टर्स को पकड़ने के लिए रोक पाएगा? हाँ, हमारे सिक्योरिटी गार्ड वहां पे खड़े, मोदी आ गए और प्राइम मिनिस्टर बोलेगा सॉरी योर फिगर इज नॉट ओवर हियर, मेरे लिस्ट में आपका फिगर नहीं है, यू आर नॉट अलाउड। अंदर आएगा नहीं आएगा? अंदर आएगा। And then this is what? This is nucleus, even passes through the nucleus and binds with the DNA, binds with the DNA. And it straight away binds with the DNA and straight away वही DNA में bind करने के बाद we know DNA is going to make what? mRNA. By what process? Transcription. By transcription. And transcription से क्या बनेगा ultimately? Protein called translation. And translation से प्रोटीन बनने के बाद physiological response immediately बनना स्टार्ट हो जाएगा, and that's why steroid hormones are fast and effective. Fast and effective. बोलो समझ में आया कि नहीं आया? आप डॉक्टर बन जाओगे, स्टेरॉइड मेडिसिन दोगे स्ट्रेट अवे? हाँ, अगर कंडीशन उस हाइट पे चला गया है then you are going to use steroid, otherwise you are going to avoid steroid using. Why? Fast acting है, but side effect रहेगा नहीं रहेगा? रहेगा. Got the idea? So that is what is steroid. Steroid is fast, effective. It has got a role with directly with what? DNA. समझ में आया क्या? कोई भी स्टेज में वो कोई फिजियोलॉजिकल रिस्पॉन्स चाहिए, कोई बायोकेमिकल रिस्पॉन्स, सेकंड मैसेंजर इसको चाहिए नहीं. It's never needs any thing like that. Clear? Because they are fat soluble, lipid soluble. देखो. Okay. Steroid hormones and iodothyronins influence the cellular activities by binding to its DNA and forming a gene hormone complex. कहां पे? Gene hormone complex देखो, वहां पे क्या था? Hormone receptor complex. Remember? यहाँ पे gene hormone complex बना दिया. Hormones which interact with membrane-bound receptors normally do not enter the target cell but generate second messenger. जो पहला वाला केस था, example cyclic AMP, IP-3 and calcium ion, which in turn regulate cellular metabolism. Hormones which interact with the intracellular receptors, example steroid hormones, iodothyronin, this is very important. Iodothyronin मतलब thyroxine, T3, T4, mostly regulate gene expressions or chromosome function by the interaction of hormone receptor complex with the genome. Cumulative biochemical actions result in physiological and development effects. Steroid hormones and thyroxine hormones regulate the gene expressions of target cells. Clear? Just now we have seen this and this. That's all about this chapter, I think. Fine. That's all about this chapter. Now, before we start, we complete, we need to ask you some questions straight away. 3 minutes. Fine. Straight away. Okay. Let us start with the quiz. And if you know the answer, straight away you have to answer it. Yeah. Close your books. That's it. Chalo. Jaldi se. Fast. The great Khali suffering from? Acromegaly. Growth hormone hypersecretion in adult makes acromegaly. Next. Name the hormone. Name the hormone which is called as milk producing hormone. Milk producing hormone. Milk producing hormone. Prolactin. Milk production done by prolactin. Milk secretion done by oxytocin. Okay, milk secretion done by oxytocin. Name the hormone which helps in making the disease called diabetes insipidus.
Insulin.
Diabetes insipidus. Hyposecretion of ADH, antidiuretic hormone, helps in reabsorption of water. If there is a hyposecretion of ADH, have you talked about that? Oxytocin and बात किया था ना ADH के बारे में? I think we have talked about that. ADH. Yes, antidiuretic hormone. Its main function is going to reabsorb water from the descending limb of healthy. So the more it is going to reabsorb water, the urine becomes concentrated. The urine becomes concentrated. Is this clear? So hyposecretion of ADH is going to draw less of water. So urine becomes what? Dilute. So the maturation rate is going to increase or decrease. Maturation rate is going to increase, and there will be huge volume of urine called diabetes insipidus. Diabetes insipidus. Name the hormone which is secreted which is formed due to hyposecretion of insulin. Diabetes mellitus. What is the other name for that? Hyperglycemia. Hyperglycemia. Name the hormone which helps in regulation of blood calcium level inside body. Very good. Thyroid, calcitonin and parathyroid hormone. PTH. Fine. It regulates the blood calcium level. Very good. Well done. Name the hormone which is secreted from zona reticularis of adrenal cortex. Sex corticoids. Sex corticoids. What is the example of sex corticoids? Epiandrostenedione and androstenedione. Very good. Chalo. What happens due to hyper secretion of adrenal cortex hormone? Hyper secretion. Cushing's syndrome. Cushing's syndrome. Cushing's disease. And what happens due to hyposecretion? Addison's disease. Addison's disease. Fine. Chalo. All the very best. This chapter is over. Go and write the notes and make your own notes. Start solving questions. Chalo. That's it. So next day we are going to start with a new topic. Okay.